Hi, my name is Dee Fink, and I'm here with my close friend Jeff Gritzner. This website is going to tell you about an incredible trip that Jeff and I took after our time in Iran. What we're going to do on this first video is just give you a big picture of what we did, and then we're going to share some text and pictures and videos and stories of other segments of it in more detail later on. But just to kind of situate this, Jeff and I went to Iran in the Peace Corps in 1962 to 64. And we were sent to an agricultural high school in the city of Ahvaz, which is in the southwest part of Iran, the Khuzestan province. And one of the great things that the Peace Corps did was offer all the volunteers the option, when they finished, of either flying home or, if they preferred, which we chose to do, was giving us the cash value of the plane ticket, and then we got to travel around and do some other things afterward to get home. However, well, there were 4 of us in that group, Jeff and I and another couple that met in the Peace Corps and got married, Willard Louden and Virginia Hudson. And they met, but they had to, when we finished here, they went home to get married and then agreed to meet us in England, because the whole trip turned out to be us going to England, buying a Land Rover station wagon, which we had pre-ordered, outfitting it for travel, and then traveling through England, or through Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. So let me tell you just the big picture, first part of that. What Jeff and I did then was go from Ahvaz up to the northwest part of Iran, took a train across Turkey to Istanbul, took a boat down to Athens, and spent a little time there, then took a boat over Brindisi, I think, wasn't it? In Italy.
Yes.
And then came up through Italy. And our goal was to get up to the city of Florence, where Jeff and I had agreed to meet another Peace Corps volunteer who had flown to England, bought an Austin Healey there, and the 3 of us were going to trot around for a little bit while Jeff and I were on our way to England to meet Jeff in Virginia. So we did that, met Jim, and then went through France. Jeff and I then left Jim, took a boat across the English Channel to London, met Virginian Willard, and went to Birmingham, or what was the name of the town? Somewhere around Birmingham. Solihull, that's right, where we picked up the Land Rover, drove real quickly down through France and Spain, crossed the Straits of Gibraltar. For us, the trip started when we got to Morocco. So we spent several weeks trawling around in Morocco and one part of the north coast of Algeria, then came down, crossed the Sahara Desert on our Land Rover, went through down to Mali, to the city of Timbuktu, through West Africa, tried to go west, couldn't do it, and we'll tell you some stories about that later. Came on down to the coast of Ivory Coast, then went east through Ghana, Togo, Dahomey, Nigeria, crossed up into Chad, had some big adventures there. We had to get passports, but that took 4 weeks because they had to send we had to get visas rather. They sent our passports back to France, got the visas, and then sent them back to us. So we tooled around Chad for a while. And then we had the one major change in our planned itinerary. The whole original goal for this trip was to get down to East Africa and see the game preserves back in the 1960s when they were in really good shape yet. We had to make a detour. We'll tell you the reason for that was it was our one close call with serious danger. We were not able to go down through Central African Republic and over. So we went east through Sudan, tried to get down there, couldn't, tried to get to Ethiopia, couldn't. So we had to abandon eventually the whole East African portion of our trip. Went up the Nile to Egypt, spent some time through there, and then caught a ferry from Alexandria over to Beirut. And I'll let Jeff tell you about the rest of our trip from that point on.
Okay, yeah, we had gone through, visited the archaeological sites in Egypt, left Alexandria, came to Limassol in Cyprus, then back to Lebanon, and then into Jerusalem, which was under the control at the time of Jordan, into Syria. It had some really interesting exchanges in that area, which we'll discuss at a later time, into Iraq, down to Kuwait, then revisited where we had served in Peace Corps, DNI and Will in the north, in Virginia, in the north central region of Iran, continued down to Afghanistan, and then into Pakistan. Went through Pakistan relatively quickly. There was tension at the border between Pakistan and India, as there often is, and so that was really done under almost the dark of night in crossing over to Amritsar, the Sikh temple in Amritsar, and then spent quite a bit of time in India with various archaeological ruins. I mean, traveling through the old world, as it were, is quite remarkable in terms of what's left to be seen of the region. And then came to eastern India, Calcutta.
And this is where I had to leave the group at that time, because I got a notice from my draft board back in the States that they had reclassified me 1A, and I had to go back and deal with that. So I left from Bombay to fly home. But Jeff and Willard in Virginia kept on for a while, so you can tell them about where all you continued from that point on.
Mostly it was northern and central India that we visited. We tried to get up into Nepal, and were unsuccessful because the road had washed out, so we were in the Nepalese lowlands, the Terai area, and I just found it so interesting, and we'll go into the sort of how well we're received and how remarkable the people and so on of the region are. We continued to Myanmar, which was then Burma, and it was a 24-hour pass. The visas were only for the short period of time, so we couldn't drive over, we couldn't bring the Land Rover. We shipped the Land Rover from Calcutta, came in, spent our 24 hours productively in Rangoon, and then traveled by air and plane and bus and so on, flying from Calcutta to Myanmar, basically with Union of Burma Airlines, and then again flew into Thailand, then down, took a train to Cambodia, and then flew to Vietnam, and then from Vietnam flipped to Hong Kong, and then just very briefly to Taiwan, and then on to Japan. And from Japan, the trip was effectively over at that time. We spent a good bit of time, again, visiting fish markets and different things and so on. It wasn't as though we just entered and left Japan, but then flew into San Francisco, and that was effectively the end of the trip. We parted there. Will and Jenny went back to Colorado, and I to Arizona.
One interesting thing about that final portion of the trip, without any pre-planning at all, I went on almost the same itinerary as Jeff and the others. When I left India, I flew out of Bombay on a Japan Airlines flight to San Francisco and then went home from there. But I decided I wanted to see, because I had to get home fairly quickly, but I decided every place that plane stopped, I got off and stayed 24 hours, then caught the same flight the next day on. So I went from Bombay to Calcutta to Bangkok to Hong Kong to Tokyo, and then on to San Francisco, almost the same places they visited. They did some additional ones, but the same general itinerary. I just went quicker, they took more time, had a few weeks that they were doing that, and then we got home. One of the interesting parts of this story of the whole thing was when all the way back when Jeff and I crossed the channel into England, it was the 4th of July going into England, Americans going into England of 1964. When I landed in San Francisco, it was the 4th of July, 1965. So it was almost exactly, for me, it was almost exactly a 12-month trip. an exciting thing, and we'll be sharing more, like I said, more stories with you and more details about that with text, pictures, and video.